I think it's a very sad day for Leeds. I think it's slightly sad for football.
This is an adventure, and I hope it can go a long way as an adventure.
We lived the dream. We enjoyed the dream.
I look on them all, every one of them in this club, as my own son.
Leeds United in the 21st century. It could have been a soap opera. There's been triumph, tears, scandal, and a grim fascination in their world falling apart.
I hold him straight away and I said, Michael, just been given the sack now. He went, you are.
For him to leave, I think it was a better.
Jonathan Woodgate was a player we did not want to sell.
I still believe we did what was right for the long-term financial health of the football club.
And it was a bit like, you know, what's happening, and the soul is getting ripped out here.
May the 8th, 2001. David O'Leary's Leeds United are in Valencia for the second leg of the Champions League semi-final, after the first match at Elland Road had finished goalless.
Once you got to the semi-final, you dreamt of getting to the final, and we went into the second leg quite hopeful. And I know the players were very much looking forward to nicking the away goal and get through to the final, but obviously it wasn't to be.
But Leeds' chances of reaching only their second ever European Cup final were dealt a cruel blow by UEFA. On the eve of the game, they announced their decision to suspend Lee Bowyer for an incident which had taken place in the first leg. It had gone unpunished by referee Pierluigi Collina.
Typical us, nothing could run smoothly. Could not believe it. Don't know what it was for in many ways. I met, funny enough, on the Friday, Collina. He couldn't believe himself because he didn't see anything in the game.
Certainly I know a number of people felt that it was probably because it was Leeds United, but I don't think you can really say that. I think you just have to say, that's the decision, let's get on with it and not dwell on it. But there's no doubt it impacted on the team and it rattled the team ahead of such a big game.
Leeds went down 3-0 in Valencia, but their achievement in reaching the Champions League semi-final at the first attempt still sets them apart from all other English clubs who've entered the competition. Bowyer's suspension was even harder to take because of his extraordinary form during the run to that semi-final. Extraordinary because it coincided with the first of two court cases involving him and teammate Jonathan Woodgate, both accused of attacking a student.
I think he was a one-off, freaky type of person, that amazing fitness level. And I think that he was sitting in court all week, whenever he'd come down, and I think the Saturday was the release for him, because Lee's a type that if you had him in at 9 in the morning to 9 at night, as long as there's a football there, he wouldn't mind training, and he was fantastic to deal with within the football club.
I think Boyer was very impressive, you know, when he plays under those circumstances, especially with in front of the crowd who were always bowing him, and you know, but I think he showed character.
Woody was daft, and I've seen, you know, he didn't handle it like Lee did, and he become a kind of a skeleton, washed out and drained, and couldn't really play in the end. And but a person again who was fantastic to deal with within the football club. I never had an ounce of trouble out either of them.
There was still humour, especially with the senior players. You know, I mean, we wanted to keep that spirit going. You know, and we wanted to know that we were behind them. You know, whatever happens.
But that team spirit was severely tested when defender Michael Dewberry, found innocent on his sole charge of perverting the course of justice, gave evidence against Woodgate. Just hours later, the two men had to play together in a reserve game.
I tried to say, listen, I had no choice. She said, no, you know, you've killed me.
What Dubes did, I think he knew that he's gonna be in danger, and it's gonna impact more to the club and more into the situation and to himself. So I think both boys were sensible enough that they were still coming in, having talks together, and laughing and joking around.
For everyone involved, the nightmare was intensified by one newspaper article. It suggested that the attack on Sarfraz Najib was racially motivated, causing the trial to collapse.
Oh, it was good to try and run a football team, and the way certain people got carried away at Leeds and around the club and outside, didn't appreciate what we were doing and still having to go through the court stuff and run a football club. They didn't. They took us for granted on that, and to say to go through that again, I didn't know whether I could face it again.
And I don't think anybody who wasn't intimately involved with Leeds United at the time can truly understand how much that took out of many of us at the club. The mailbag on a daily basis was appalling. All of it vitriolic against me personally, against the club, because we were still playing, Lee and Jonathan. People had prejudged the outcome. And a number of the letters had to be passed on to the police because they were so threatening.
Peter was a great support to me. That the threats that my family were under, my wife, who never comes to football, what's it to do with her, and what we were living through. It was just a very, very bad time.
Another court case loomed, but after their Champions League exploits, there was a tangible feel-good factor at Elland Road. It seemed that David O'Leary's team was ready to challenge Manchester United and Arsenal for the title, especially after Leeds' win at Arsenal early the next season.
Most of all, I'd like to thank my family and my friends for sticking by me.
In December 2001, Lee Bowyer was cleared of all charges against him. Jonathan Woodgate was given community service after being found guilty of the lesser charge of affray. But the controversy surrounding Bowyer wasn't over. Both players were disciplined by the club for being drunk on the streets of Leeds. While Woodgate accepted a fine, Bowyer refused to pay. He was put on the transfer list.
I have no problem with him personally, but I think that Lee felt let down. But frankly, I felt let down because we'd stood by both Lee and Jonathan. Clearly it had done the club enormous harm, whatever the circumstances, and I thought it was the right thing for the club to do, to be seen, to be saying to the world and to the players that you have to have a code of conduct.
You don't just slap massive fines on players, especially when the players had arrived for training that morning. They'd been told by the manager that it was solidarity and it was all the players against the press because everybody's going to be against us.
I stand by the decisions we took at the time, and I'm very disappointed if it did affect my relationship with Lee Bowyer, but I'm sure that was probably what did.
You ask any fan and they'll pay the fine if they have to.
Lee came off the list because we then came to an agreement about the fine, and he would have never gone on the list in the first place if we hadn't have had the problems in him agreeing to the fine. I was delighted because he was a very good footballer.
Chance for Lee Bowyer on his return! Would you believe that? It's his way. It's perhaps the best way in the circumstances of putting two fingers up to the world.
On New Year's Day 2002, new boy Robbie Fowler sealed a 3-0 win against West Ham, which put Leeds top of the Premiership. It seemed all their problems were behind them.
The atmosphere around the club was an atmosphere of you thought you were at the bottom of the league and getting relegated because of the amount of bad publicity that the club was getting. It was horrendous.
we had an air of confidence that we'd get back in the Champions League. In fact, we did a presentation in the January to one of our major shareholders when we were top, and they said, where do you expect to finish? And we said, well, we'd be very disappointed if we finished lower than 4th and missed the Champions League. And I remember them saying, well, there's not a risk of you finishing outside the top 4, the only question is which position in the top 4. And of course, we then ended up 5th in the league.
If we finished mid-table, you'd have done well and written the season off and got on with it, and then come back, trial over with, clean slate, and let's go on and concentrate from pre-season, getting everybody right, to play.
I just went in this morning and I was told I was sacked. So simple as that.
The holiday stuff. Okay. See you, lads. Good luck.
Only took about a couple of minutes and said, David, two players have said that their agents have told us that if you're not here, if you're here next season, they won't play well. And I said, well, are agents running this football club again? Or are they running it?
What's going on, Rhysdale? Come on! Speak to the fans!
Every call I got, that whole day was, people just thought it was I was getting it from the players, they were on holiday all over the world, and they were starting to hear from various time zones, and managers ring me up and thinking, are we hearing this right?
If you look back, David and I probably had one of the closest relationships of chairman and manager. We'd been through some wonderful times and some difficult times, and it was probably the most difficult business decision that I've ever had to contribute to in my life.
I said to Peter, could I use his phone? And Peter, being the manners he has, said, do you want me to step out? You presumed I was ringing my wife. And I said, no, I'm not ringing Joy, I want to ring Michael Kenny, my solicitor.
I know David was very upset at the time, but I can assure you I was equally upset, because I knew that it was the end of an era, really, and of course so it proved to be.
To me, everything after the court case, this is where the damage was seriously done. And then, of course, the book he brought out.
Leeds United on trial, well, after the Boyer and the Woodgate situation, that's the last thing in the world you want, was a book coming out. And whoever encouraged him to write that deserves locking up for that.
The part that we let ourselves down, and accept total responsibility, is the title of the book. That was we could have controlled that. We never looked at it, never thought about it.
Certainly post the trial and post the book, there was a feeling within the club that the mood had changed.
I don't think any manager who is in a current job should have a newspaper article where they've got to sometimes criticise their own situation. I think they earn enough money as football managers. Like, they don't do things like that, I know David has said he never lost a dressing room, but, people who know the inside knows he did lose a dressing room.
I was a little bit disappointed in the approach, how he approached the players, how he spoke to the players at some point, and I think that's what made the team spirit and the team struggle a little bit. I think, yes, with most of the players not being happy at the club, for him to leave, I think it was better.
It's amazing that people don't say things when you're there in that way, but I definitely thought things needed to be sorted out there for the following season, without a doubt.
What I could never understand in the whole situation was the Eddie Gray situation. He was there, first team coach, everything's flying along, and then why bring Brian Kidd in? And it's no disrespect to Brian. Not being wise afterwards, I said, well, the fans will never accept him with his Man United connections.
David was the manager of the club, and he felt that was the correct thing to do. I disagreed with it. I don't think there's any secret in that. I just felt we changed our approach to the game and how we approach games.
I think Eddie might have a point in one part, that we were playing more cautious way, and that wasn't the way I wanted to play. And I think Eddie's right in that part.
I was just guessing at numbers and
don't know what was going through their mind. You know, to me they were burning, and not just a little bit of money, burning big money.
The financial thing I hadn't got a clue about, because I don't want to play any part in it. I want people to say we either can afford or not afford.
It's a classic case of catch-22. If you don't sign the players, you don't get the Champions League, then you lose that cash. You sign them and stand a chance of getting the Champions League, and the riches, as we'd seen the year before, were there for us to take. What went wrong is we signed the players and didn't get back into the Champions League.
It never rains, but it pours, and my goodness, it is a pouring steroid rain for Leeds, their manager and their chairman.
In most people's eyes, O'Leary was sacked over the proposed sale of Rio Ferdinand. Manchester United were lurking. The board seemed ready to cash in, but the manager wasn't playing ball.
That was nothing to do with dismissal at all.
I've honestly nothing to say on that at the moment. Might have one day, but not at the moment.
We were disappointed given the investment that 2 years running we missed getting back into the Champions League. And David knew that for the level of investment we'd made, that was the way in which he would be judged.
If they wanted to make a change, thought they were wrong completely, but if they wanted to make it, fine. Where I got totally disgusted with them afterwards was the spin and the lack of class, and I think it backfired on them big time. And I knew that I had the fans, and my memories of walking around the pitch the last game this season, 37,000, and people saying, see it start the next season. I was looking forward to it. I just wonder now, when they think back, those people, would they have done the same thing?
I'm delighted we've got one of the best coaches in football who is now going to take on the challenge with us to get Leeds United to the next stage, i.e. back to compete for trophies.
How lucky can one guy be?
I just felt that it was always on the agenda, although I had a 2-year contract, that I would go there for 1 year, and then, in my opinion, Martin O'Neill was the one that I think they were talking to, would take over. And it was just a matter of if certain things happened bad enough that I would walk, you know, which I wasn't prepared to do.
He breezed into Elland Road, tickled pink. But Venables didn't know that the battle to keep his star defender had been lost before it even began.
I met Rio Ferdinand and Penny Zahavi, who was his representation at the time, to keep him there, you know. And I must have spoke to him for an hour to say where we were going to go and what we were going to do, you know. And they're looking at me. They think, doesn't he know then, you know, or is he just a liar? And which was embarrassing.
After some memorable early wins, everything soon turned sour, and in the face of huge debts, O'Leary's squad was being broken up. By now, even the fans were glad to see the back of Bowyer, but Jonathan Woodgate was seen as untouchable.
Should we have spent so heavily in the past? Probably not. But we lived the dream. We enjoyed the dream. Only by making the right decisions today can we rekindle the dream once again in the future.
My head keeps spinning.
He said that, well, you didn't look very happy, he said, Peter. And I said, well, what do you want, a round of applause? I said, well, no, that's the way I felt. Woodgate going, it was there, it was really showing that we were showing no sensitivity for the football side. It was sheer, we've got to do this, this is where we're going. Yeah, but hold on, just have a look back here. And it was a bit like, you know, what's happening? And the soul is getting ripped out here.
To sell somebody who meant so much to Leeds United, and certainly to the time I was there, was extremely difficult. And at the time, I thought I probably should have resigned when we sold him.
Ridsdale was now public enemy number one. But within 2 months, it was Terry Venables who was out on his ear.
It was in 3 papers on the same day, and I did go, I left the training ground and confronted Peter Ridsdale about it. And he started off saying, no, there's no truth in it whatsoever. But by talking and talking, I realised there was.
The way we do business is that if we'd made that decision, we weren't trying to persuade somebody to say, OK, well, I'll go instead of me having the nerve or the ability to inform somebody of the board's decision. I agreed to meet Terry to convey the board's decision to him, and that's exactly what I did.
So he said, well, perhaps a change would be good. He said, but I don't know, you know, it's up to you. What do you want to do? So I said, well, I want to stay here till the end of the season. And I got a year next year to come as well, which must have possibly worried him a bit. So, and out of it, he finally thought it would be a good idea to have a change. So that's in a nutshell what happened.
Money Road.
You can't go through life regretting this. Should David have gone? Should Terry have been appointed? The fact is that during David's time, we had the most successful spell when I was chairman, and Terry's tenure was disappointing. The sad thing is that, you know, with all the good nights, you know, the chairmanship's a great job, and with the bad days, it's a difficult job. But you can't moan about the fact that you have difficult days as well. That does come with the job, and you either do the job or you get out, which ultimately is what I decided to do.
I do know the history of the football club, being a Liverpool fan as a youngster. And even though it is difficult times, so to speak, it's still a club that most people, including myself, you know, it's an honour to manage. And I've just got to, you know, try and get back to the good times.
Don left them with champions, and at that time £2 million in the bank. You know, they became skint in the second division by the early 80s, so it happened before. Let's hope it doesn't happen again.
Still a Leeds supporter, nobody will ever take that away from me, and I wish the current board every success, and I hope Leeds United is successful.
My ambition is to steady the ship and then to push us forward back up the table and to make it a great club once more.
I'm grateful that the support they gave me, and I'll always want those fans to do well.
As long as the club survive and stay among the elite, I think that's the most important thing.
That club, those supporters, that potential, people think, and quite rightly, that it should be a team competing for the game's top honours.
I'm sure, you know, a great club like that and the traditions, they'll come back. We proved it way back in 1990 that it can happen. I'm sure it'll happen again.
How do you clear debts that we're in? It's going to be ever so difficult. You're going to have a really good run, or produce somebody's got to come along and make Leeds United great again.
People have ups and downs in life, and you've got to face them. You're either big enough to face them and battle them and get on with it, or you're not.